King Edward stood at the tall windows of Rosewood Palace, watching the morning sun paint golden streaks across the royal gardens. His wife, Queen Isabella, sat quietly at her writing desk, but neither of them could focus on their duties. Their minds were occupied with their daughter, Princess Sophia, who had been struggling for months. At 12 years old, Princess Sophia was known throughout the kingdom for her gentle spirit. But lately, something had changed. The once confident young princess had become withdrawn and quiet. She spent most of her time alone in her chambers, avoiding royal events and family gatherings. The spark in her bright blue eyes had dimmed, and her parents were deeply concerned. The trouble had started 6 months earlier when Princess Sophia began attending the Royal Academy alongside children from noble families. Unlike her older brother Prince Alexander, who excelled in his studies and made friends easily, Sophia found herself struggling to fit in. The other children seemed to form groups naturally, leaving the young princess feeling isolated and different. "She barely spoke during breakfast again," Queen Isabella said softly, setting down her pen. Her dark hair was pulled back elegantly, but worry lines creased her usually serene face. I asked about her lessons, and she just nodded and looked down at her plate. King Edward turned from the window, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the ornate carpet. His usually confident demeanor was replaced with the helpless feeling that comes when parents cannot solve their child's problems. "The tutors say she's brilliant, perhaps even more gifted than Alexander was at her age. But they also mention how she sits alone during breaks and rarely participates in group activities." The royal couple had tried everything they could think of. They arranged private conversations with their daughter, brought in the kingdom's best counselors, and even considered removing her from the academy. But Princess Sophia insisted she wanted to continue her education there, even though it was clearly causing her distress. "Remember when she was little?" Queen Isabella asked, a gentle smile crossing her face despite her worry. She would run through these halls, chattering away about everything she saw and learned. "She asked 1,000 questions every day and wasn't afraid of anything." King Edward nodded, remembering those happier days. Princess Sophia had been fearless as a small child, climbing trees in the royal gardens despite her nanny's protests, asking complex questions that stumped even the court scholars, and befriending everyone from kitchen staff to visiting dignitaries. Her curiosity and warmth had been infectious, bringing joy to everyone around her. "She still has that same brilliant mind," the king said thoughtfully. "Yesterday, I found her reading advanced philosophy texts in the library. When I asked about it, she explained concepts that most adults struggle to understand, but then she quickly put the book away and apologized for bothering me." This was another concerning change. Princess Sophia had begun apologizing constantly, as if her very presence was an inconvenience. She would slip quietly into rooms, speak only when directly addressed, and seem to shrink into herself whenever attention turned her way. The confident, inquisitive child they knew and loved was still there, but hidden behind walls of self-doubt and insecurity. The situation had come to a head the previous week during the Harvest Festival celebration. Princess Sophia was expected to give a short speech to the gathered citizens, a tradition for royal children her age. She had prepared thoroughly, writing and rewriting her remarks dozens of times. But when the moment came to step forward and speak, she froze completely. Standing before hundreds of expectant faces, Princess Sophia had simply stared at the crowd in silence. Her small hands trembled as she held her carefully prepared notes, but no words came out. After what felt like an eternity, she had run from the platform in tears, leaving the gathered crowd confused and her parents heartbroken. That evening, King Edward and Queen Isabella had found their daughter in the palace chapel, sitting alone in the front pew. When they approached, she had looked up with tears streaming down her face and said something that haunted them both. "I'm not brave like Alexander. I'm not good at anything important. Maybe I'm not meant to be a princess." The words had struck them like a physical blow. How could their brilliant, kind, wonderful daughter believe such things about herself? They had spent hours that night talking with her, reassuring her of their love and her worth, but the damage to her self-confidence seemed deep and persistent. "The children at the academy," Princess Sophia had finally admitted, "they say I'm different. They say I ask too many questions and think too much about things that don't matter. They call me strange when I get excited about history or science. So I try to stay quiet now. But then they say I'm stuck up and think I'm better than them because I'm royal." It was a painful revelation that explained so much. Princess Sophia was caught in an impossible situation, criticized for being herself but also rejected when she tried to change. The natural curiosity and intelligence that her parents cherished made her stand out in ways that attracted negative attention from her peers. Queen Isabella had felt her heart break for her daughter. She remembered her own struggles as a young woman, trying to balance her intellectual interests with social expectations. But seeing her child go through similar struggles was far more painful than her own experiences had been. "We need to find a way to help her remember who she really is," Queen Isabella said now, returning to the present moment. "Not who others think she should be, but the amazing person we've always known her to be." King Edward nodded in agreement, but they both felt uncertain about how to proceed. Traditional approaches hadn't worked, and they were reluctant to push too hard and risk making things worse. Princess Sophia needed to find her own way back to confidence, but perhaps she needed the right opportunity to rediscover her strengths. As if summoned by their thoughts, a gentle knock came at the door. Princess Sophia's lady-in-waiting, Margaret, entered with a concerned expression. Margaret had been caring for the princess since birth and loved her like her own granddaughter. "Your Majesties," Margaret said with a slight curtsy, "I thought you should know that Princess Sophia has been spending considerable time in the old East Wing of the palace. She's been very secretive about what she's doing there, but I've seen her carrying books and supplies back and forth." This was intriguing news. The East Wing contained mostly storage rooms and had been largely unused for years. What could possibly draw their daughter to that dusty, forgotten part of the palace? King Edward and Queen Isabella exchanged curious glances, both wondering if this mysterious activity might be connected to their daughter's eventual transformation. "Has she asked for any particular materials or assistance?" Queen Isabella inquired. "She requested some old furniture from storage and asked for help carrying several heavy books from the library," Margaret replied. "She's been working on something every day after her lessons, but she's asked me not to tell anyone about it. I wouldn't have mentioned it except that she seems different when she comes back. More like her old self, if only briefly." This was the first hopeful news they had heard in months. If Princess Sophia was rediscovering some spark of her former enthusiasm, even in secret, it might be exactly what she needed. King Edward and Queen Isabella decided they would respect their daughter's privacy while keeping a careful, loving watch over her progress. Neither parent could have imagined that their daughter's secret project in the East Wing would soon lead to a transformation so remarkable and touching that it would move them both to tears of joy and pride. 3 weeks passed before King Edward and Queen Isabella discovered what their daughter had been secretly creating in the abandoned East Wing. The revelation came quite by accident when Queen Isabella was walking through the palace corridors late one evening, checking on the household staff's preparations for the next day. As she passed the entrance to the East Wing, she heard an unusual sound, voices coming from the supposedly empty rooms. But these weren't the voices of palace staff or intruders. They were children's voices, and they sounded excited and engaged, curious and slightly concerned. Queen Isabella quietly followed the sound down the dusty hallway. What she discovered when she peered through a partially open doorway took her breath away completely. Princess Sophia had transformed one of the old storage rooms into something magical, a combination library, classroom, and workshop that sparkled with creativity and purpose. The heavy books she had been carrying weren't just for reading. She had been researching how to create an educational space for children. The room was filled with about 8 children, ranging in age from 7 to 13. Some Queen Isabella recognized as children of palace staff, others appeared to be from the nearby village. They were gathered around Princess Sophia, who was animatedly explaining a science experiment using simple household items. Her blue eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she demonstrated how to create a rainbow using water, sunlight, and a piece of glass. "You see," Princess Sophia was saying, her voice clear and confident in a way her mother hadn't heard in months. "Light looks white to us, but it's actually made up of all the colors mixed together. When we bend the light through the glass, we can separate it and see each individual color." The children watched in wonder as a beautiful rainbow appeared on the wall, their faces lit up with amazement and curiosity. One small boy raised his hand eagerly. "Princess Sophia, why doesn't the rainbow stay if we move the glass?" Instead of dismissing the question or giving a simple answer, Princess Sophia encouraged the boy's curiosity. "That's an excellent question, Thomas. What do you think might happen? Let's try it and see." She handed the glass to the boy, guiding him as he moved it and watched the rainbow dance across the wall. Queen Isabella felt tears spring to her eyes as she watched her daughter in action. This was the confident, brilliant, caring child she remembered, but somehow even more remarkable than before. Princess Sophia wasn't just sharing knowledge. She was nurturing the same kind of curiosity in these children that had always burned brightly within her. The room itself told an amazing story of creativity and determination. Princess Sophia had arranged old furniture to create comfortable reading corners, science experiment stations, and art areas. She had covered the walls with colorful charts showing everything from the alphabet and numbers to maps of the kingdom and diagrams of the solar system. There were shelves filled with books she had carefully selected from the palace library, ranging from simple picture books to more advanced texts. But what impressed Queen Isabella most was how the children responded to her daughter. They hung on every word, asked thoughtful questions, and clearly adored their young teacher. Princess Sophia had created an environment where curiosity was celebrated, questions were encouraged, and every child felt valued and important. "Now," Princess Sophia continued, "who wants to try the next experiment? We're going to learn about how plants drink water." She showed them glasses of water with food coloring and white flowers, explaining how they would be able to see the water traveling up the stems by watching the flowers change color. A girl who looked about 9 years old raised her hand shyly. "Princess Sophia, my mother says plants don't really drink like we do. Is that true?" "Your mother is absolutely right, Emma," Princess Sophia replied warmly. "Plants don't have mouths like we do. They take in water through their roots in a completely different way. Should we explore how that works?" Queen Isabella watched in amazement as her daughter guided the children through discovering the answer for themselves. Rather than simply providing information, Princess Sophia asked questions that helped them think through the problem and reach their own conclusions. Her natural teaching ability was extraordinary, and her genuine love for learning was clearly infectious. As the informal lesson continued, Queen Isabella noticed other remarkable changes in her daughter. Princess Sophia's posture was straight and confident. Her voice was strong and clear. Most importantly, her face glowed with happiness and purpose in a way that had been missing for months. The children obviously cherished their time with her. They listened intently when she spoke, participated eagerly in discussions, and treated her with a respect that was based on admiration rather than her royal status. This was the key difference from her experiences at the Royal Academy. Here, Princess Sophia was valued for her knowledge, curiosity, and kindness rather than judged for being different. After the children had carefully set up their flower experiments and settled down with books, Queen Isabella decided to reveal her presence. She knocked gently on the doorframe and stepped into the room. The children immediately stood and curtsied or bowed, but Princess Sophia looked mortified at being discovered. "Mother, I can explain," Princess Sophia stammered, her confidence faltering for the first time that evening. "I know I should have asked permission, but I wanted to try something different, and these children don't have many opportunities to learn about science and literature, and I thought maybe—" "Sophia," Queen Isabella interrupted gently, approaching her daughter with tears of pride in her eyes. "What you've created here is absolutely wonderful." The relief on Princess Sophia's face was immediate and profound. "You're not angry?" "Angry? My darling, I'm amazed and so incredibly proud of you." Queen Isabella looked around the transformed room with genuine admiration. "Tell me about what you've been doing here." With growing excitement, Princess Sophia began explaining her project. "I started coming here because I needed somewhere quiet to think. But then I remembered how much I used to love learning new things, and I wondered if other children might feel the same way. I met Thomas when his mother was working in the kitchens, and he was asking questions about how bread rises. That made me realize that children everywhere have the same curiosity I do." She gestured to the children, who were listening to every word despite pretending to read their books. "So I asked a few children if they wanted to learn about science and stories and history together. It started with just Thomas and Emma, but word spread. Now we meet 3 times a week after my academy lessons." "What kinds of things do you teach them?" Queen Isabella asked, settling into one of the small chairs her daughter had arranged. Princess Sophia's enthusiasm bubbled over as she described their activities. "We do experiments to understand how the world works. We read stories from different kingdoms and talk about what they mean. We learn about history by acting out important events. And we practice writing by creating our own stories." One of the younger children, a girl of about 7, approached shyly. "Your Majesty," she said in a small voice, "Princess Sophia helps us understand things that seemed too hard before. She makes learning feel like playing games." Queen Isabella felt her heart swell with pride and emotion. Her daughter had instinctively understood something that many experienced educators struggled with, that learning should be joyful and engaging. Princess Sophia had created exactly the kind of environment where her own love of knowledge could flourish while helping others discover the same excitement. "The best part," Princess Sophia continued, "is seeing them get excited about new ideas. Emma discovered she loves mathematics when we measured ingredients for simple cooking experiments. Thomas wants to be a historian now because he's fascinated by stories about ancient kingdoms. And little Sarah is writing her own fairy tales." As Queen Isabella spent more time in the makeshift classroom, she realized that her daughter had not only found her confidence again, but had discovered something even more important: her purpose and passion. Teaching these children had given Princess Sophia a way to use her intelligence and curiosity that felt meaningful and valued. "Sophia," Queen Isabella said softly, "your father needs to see this. Would you be willing to show him what you've accomplished?" Princess Sophia hesitated for a moment, then nodded with growing confidence. "Yes, I think I would like him to meet my students." As the evening wound down and the children prepared to return to their families, each one thanked Princess Sophia warmly. Their genuine affection and gratitude were obvious, and Princess Sophia glowed with happiness as she hugged each child goodbye. Walking back through the palace corridors with her mother, Princess Sophia was more talkative than she had been in months. She shared stories about each child's progress, her ideas for future lessons, and her dreams of perhaps creating a real school for children who didn't have access to quality education. Queen Isabella listened with joy and amazement, realizing that her daughter's remarkable transformation was just beginning to unfold. The day that would bring King Edward and Queen Isabella to tears began like any other, but it ended with a moment of pure parental pride that neither royal would ever forget. 2 weeks had passed since Queen Isabella discovered Princess Sophia's secret classroom, and word of their daughter's extraordinary project had spread quietly through the palace. King Edward had visited the East Wing classroom several times, each visit leaving him more impressed with his daughter's natural teaching abilities and the obvious progress of her students. But Princess Sophia had been working on something special, a surprise that she hoped would demonstrate everything her students had learned and everything she had discovered about herself. "Father, Mother," Princess Sophia had said that morning at breakfast, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly with nervous excitement. "I would like to invite you to a special presentation this afternoon. My students and I have been preparing something important, and we would be honored if you could attend." The formality of her invitation, delivered with such dignity and purpose, had already begun to stir emotions in both parents. This was their daughter taking ownership of her accomplishments and proudly sharing them, a far cry from the withdrawn, apologetic child of just months before. That afternoon, King Edward and Queen Isabella made their way to the East Wing, accompanied by several curious court members who had heard whispers about the princess's mysterious activities. What they found when they arrived exceeded everyone's expectations and imagination. Princess Sophia had transformed the space once again. The room was now arranged like a proper auditorium, with chairs for adult visitors facing a small stage area that she and her students had constructed. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling displaying student artwork, scientific diagrams, and inspirational quotes about learning and curiosity. But it was Princess Sophia herself who took their breath away. Standing confidently at the front of the room, wearing a simple but elegant dress and with her hair arranged neatly, she looked every inch the poised educator and leader she had become. Her blue eyes sparkled with excitement rather than anxiety, and her smile radiated genuine happiness and pride. "Welcome, everyone," Princess Sophia began, her voice clear and strong, addressing not only her parents but the dozen adults who had gathered to witness this special event. "Today, my students and I want to share with you the incredible journey we've taken together over these past months." What followed was nothing short of magical. One by one, Princess Sophia's students took the stage to demonstrate what they had learned, but more importantly, to show how their confidence and curiosity had grown under her guidance. Thomas, the shy kitchen worker's son, who had started it all with his questions about bread, presented a detailed explanation of different scientific phenomena he had discovered. Using simple props and clear language, he demonstrated how weather patterns work, why seasons change, and how plants grow. His enthusiasm was infectious, and his knowledge was genuinely impressive. Emma, who had discovered her love of mathematics, led the audience through fun number games and problem-solving exercises that had everyone laughing and participating. She explained complex concepts using storytelling and visual aids, showing a teaching ability that rivaled much older instructors. Sarah, the youngest student, proudly read an original fairy tale she had written about a brave young scholar who used knowledge and kindness to help her kingdom. The story was clearly inspired by Princess Sophia herself, and Sarah's confident delivery brought smiles to every face in the room. But the most touching moment came when all the students gathered together for a group presentation about the history of their own kingdom. They had researched, written, and rehearsed a dramatic retelling of important events, complete with costumes they had made themselves and songs they had composed together. King Edward felt his throat tighten with emotion as he watched his daughter guide her students through their performance. Princess Sophia moved among them like a natural leader, offering quiet encouragement, helping with forgotten lines, and celebrating each child's moment to shine. Her pride in their accomplishments was evident in every gesture and expression. "What impressed me most about our history," 10-year-old Marcus said during the presentation, is learning that our kingdom became great because its leaders cared about all the people, not just the wealthy ones. Princess Sophia taught us that real nobility comes from helping others learn and grow." At these words, Queen Isabella felt tears begin to flow down her cheeks. Her daughter had not only found her own confidence and purpose, but had instilled values of service and compassion in these children that would stay with them for life. The presentation continued with students demonstrating scientific experiments, sharing poetry they had written, and explaining historical concepts with enthusiasm and accuracy that amazed every adult present. But throughout it all, what struck both royal parents most deeply was the obvious love and respect between Princess Sophia and her students. When the formal presentations ended, Princess Sophia addressed the adult audience with a maturity and wisdom that seemed far beyond her 12 years. "6 months ago," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes, "I thought I was strange and different because I loved learning so much. I thought my curiosity and questions were annoying, and I tried to hide the parts of myself that made me who I am." King Edward gripped his wife's hand tightly as their daughter continued. "But these wonderful children taught me something important. They taught me that curiosity is a gift, not a burden. They showed me that being different can mean being special, and they helped me understand that the best way to feel good about yourself is to help others feel good about themselves too." Princess Sophia turned to smile at her students, who were beaming with pride and affection. Every question they asked reminded me why learning is exciting. Every time they got excited about discovering something new, they reminded me that knowledge is meant to be shared. And every time they thanked me for teaching them, they were actually teaching me the most important lesson of all. "What lesson was that, darling?" Queen Isabella asked softly, her voice thick with tears. "That being smart isn't something to hide or apologize for," Princess Sophia replied firmly. "It's something to celebrate and use to make the world better. These children don't think I'm strange for asking questions or getting excited about ideas. They think it's wonderful. And they want to be curious and excited too." The room fell silent except for the sound of sniffles and quiet crying from several moved adults. But Princess Sophia wasn't finished. "I want to ask your permission, Father and Mother, to continue this work. Not as a secret project, but as something official and important. These children and others like them deserve the chance to discover how amazing learning can be. And I've discovered that teaching them is what makes me feel most like myself." King Edward could no longer contain his emotions. Tears of pure pride and joy streamed down his face as he stood and walked to his daughter. Without caring about royal protocol or the watching crowd, he knelt down to her eye level and pulled her into a tight embrace. "Sophia," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "you have never made us more proud. Not only have you found your own strength and confidence, but you've used those gifts to lift up others. That is the true mark of a leader and a princess." Queen Isabella joined them, wrapping both husband and daughter in her arms, as happy tears continued to flow. Around them, the children clustered close, creating a circle of love and achievement that no one present would ever forget. Later that evening, after the students had gone home and the court members had departed with amazed chatter about what they had witnessed, the royal family sat together in Princess Sophia's transformed classroom. Princess Sophia was carefully organizing materials for the next day's lessons, humming softly to herself with contentment. "You know," King Edward said thoughtfully, "I think we witnessed more than just an impressive presentation today. We witnessed the birth of an extraordinary educator and leader. The best part," Queen Isabella added, "is that you didn't become someone different, Sophia. You became more completely yourself than ever before." Princess Sophia looked up from her organizing, her face glowing with happiness and purpose. "I learned that trying to hide who you are doesn't make you fit in better. It just makes you disappear. But when you embrace who you are and use it to help others, That's when you really begin to shine. As they walked back through the palace together that night, King Edward and Queen Isabella knew they had witnessed something truly remarkable. Their daughter's transformation wasn't just about gaining confidence or finding her voice. It was about discovering that her unique gifts were meant to be shared with the world. The withdrawn, apologetic child who had hidden her intelligence and curiosity was gone forever, replaced by a young woman who understood that being different was her strength, not her weakness. Princess Sophia had learned that true belonging doesn't come from making yourself smaller, but from finding the people and purposes that celebrate your authentic self. Most importantly, she had discovered that the greatest joy in life comes not from what you achieve for yourself, but from what you help others achieve for themselves. And that lesson, more than any other, convinced her parents that their daughter would indeed grow up to be a remarkable leader, not because of her royal title, but because of her generous heart and brilliant mind. The tears they had shed that afternoon were tears of pure parental joy, knowing that their daughter had not only found her way back to confidence, but had discovered a purpose that would guide her for the rest of her life.